Okay, Michael, so we have you here and you're going to share with us how to surf life's challenges using breathwork. Now, it seems that you discovered breathwork and the transformative nature of it back in the mid 2000s. And since then, you merged that with your science background and have since then birthed the Neurodynamic Breathwork uh, work that is your signature train your brain program. And yeah, it's really, really exciting. And I'd like you to share like to hand the session over to you and look forward to discovering the beauty and power of it. So thank you. Over to
Hey,
you.
thank you so much. And I'm very excited to be here with you and to be able to share one of my favorite topics in the universe, which is about breath work, just because it's been so transformative and so exciting for me in my own life. The focus of the talk tonight will be about really using breath work as one of the tools in your toolbox to navigate the stressful times and events that are happening right now, or any time in your life that's stressful, whether it's through a death in the family or a divorce or anything like that, but especially now with all the things that are happening in the world. So I'm going to start by just really talking to you a bit about my own breathwork journey, to how I found it and why it's been so meaningful for me, just to really give you a sense of what's available. And I'm actually one of the last people in the universe who you'd probably expect to be talking here. When I was in my teenage years, there's no way I would have gotten into breathwork. Uh, my father's an engineer. I was very, very science oriented when I grew up. And if you couldn't prove it to me, absolutely, for me, it didn't exist. So I was very kind of left brain oriented. And I was very successful in my life in anything that needed left brain orientation, like in my business, in things that needed logic, in terms of making money. And so I was going through my life, and I went to college for chemical engineering, went to business school, studied some neuroscience on the side because I'm just very interested in how the mind works. I always have been, and just kept getting promoted in my company. So everything looked good on the outside, but on the inside, I felt like there was something missing. And one of the symptoms of that was that every time I tried to get into a relationship, it always failed miserably. Not just a gentle failure, but a miserable failure. But with my science mind, I always figured, okay, I'm just choosing the wrong people here. If I find the right woman, it'll all work. And so I kept trying one relationship after another relationship, and it just never worked. And at that point, I wasn't far enough along in my personal development to understand that, or to see that in all these relationships, there was one common factor, and that was me. So I didn't quite get that I was creating the problem. I always thought it was the other person. So I got to my 30s, and then I had this kind of imprint from childhood. My parents were married in their 30s, 2 kids. I kind of had this unconscious imprint that that was how my life was going to go too. So when I was 32, time to get married. I happened to be dating a particular woman, hadn't fallen apart yet. So unconsciously, I'm going, okay, time to get married. This is it. So I got married. Of course, it fell apart. And after that, I went into this really, really difficult place because my entire kind of life path that I saw for myself was kind of exploded. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to be too old to have kids. I can't do it like my parents. And so I started to really reevaluate my whole life. And for the first thing I decided was, you know what? I want to do my own company. I don't want to work for somebody else. So I moved back to Los Angeles and was very successful in starting companies, but still the relationship thing I couldn't get. And then one day I met a woman that I wanted to date, and she'd broken up, but still living with her ex-boyfriend. And I was going, oh, how can I get her out for a few dates? And then one day she came to me and said, you know what, Michael, I would love to go to South America, to Peru, and check out the pink dolphins. Now, first of all, in my mind, I'm thinking, pink dolphins? What is that? But I didn't really care. It's like, okay, I want to go to South America for a week. I can kind of hang out, get to know you. We're in. Let's go. Let's go see the pink dolphins. So we ended up going down to South America, to Peru, and went out on plane ride and canoe ride out on the Amazon River. And it was just me and her and a couple people who were taking care of the cooking and that type of thing. And just as we were about to leave, the lady who was organizing it said, "Oh, would you guys like to go out with a local shaman?" This little guy about 4'10" and didn't speak any English, so it was through a translator. And I'm going, sure, why not? Bring him along. So the first night we were there, the shaman comes up through a translator and says, "Would you guys be interested in taking part in this religious ceremony that we do down here in Peru?" Now, I'm science mind, so I never say yes to things like that till I know what I'm getting into. So I go, okay, what's involved? He goes, oh, it's very simple. I go out into the rainforest. I find these certain vines and these certain leaves. I bring them all back. I put them into this cauldron, boil them up, and then you drink it. Now, for me, you have to realize I'm chemical engineering. You mix 0.56 grams of this, 0.72 grams of that. You don't put a bunch of stuff into a witch's brew and drink it. So I'm getting ready to tell him, no, thank you. I think we'll pass. And the woman that I was with, before I could say a word, said, oh yeah, we have to do this. This is going to be awesome. So now I was in a pickle. It's like I had this thinking brain saying, no, this is dangerous. Do not do this under any circumstances. And this other part of my brain going, we're all the way down here for a week. We're here to hang out with this woman. You can't look like a wimp. That's a horrible way to start this thing. So there was this like internal battle. And ultimately, for maybe one of the first times in my life, the thinking brain did not win. I finally said, okay, let's do it. So I figured we're in the rainforest. If I die here, at least it's in beautiful surroundings. So we had this journey with, I had a drink and just went on this amazing journey. And at the time, I'd never heard of it, but it was ayahuasca, as many of you may have surmised. And for the first time in my life, I really felt connected to the universe. It was just this mind-blowing experience for me. Just like, I couldn't believe it. I'm going, oh my God, like my entire life, I felt like I was separate and that it was kind of like me in a fight with the universe. It was like I had to push to get ahead, but I couldn't really trust anybody. And in that moment, it all went away. And I felt like connected to the stars, connected to the universe, and connected to all that is. So I had this amazing experience, and a week later, came back to California. And by the way, the thing with the woman just didn't work out at all, but she got me down to Peru, so it was all good. And so I got back and I'm going, okay, if there's a way to have that type of an experience with a substance, the receptors are there in my brain, there must be another way to have that experience. And that sent me on this 6-month-long journey on investigating modalities. And if there was another way for me to just have that amazing experience without obviously going to Peru and taking substances. And I tried this, I tried that, and ultimately I landed on breath work. And I explored several different modalities of breath work. And breath work is really kind of like an umbrella term. So there's a lot of different types. And the first one, I always kind of went to the creator and kind of read up on him. And where it said, how did you develop the breath work? He said, one day I just downloaded it from the universe and started doing it. So to me, not for me. And then I ultimately came across Dr. Stan Grof, who had developed holotropic breathwork. And as soon as I found out how he developed it, I was immediately pulled right in. He had basically worked with LSD psychotherapy back in the day when they were using therapists. He was a psychiatrist actually to test its value in therapy and was getting amazing results where he could get healing results in his clients that he hadn't been able to get in years worth of talk therapy. Because when they were on LSD, their mental defenses were down, they were completely open and could process stuff that wasn't available to them before. And after LSD was banned, he started to look for other ways to allow his clients to have those experiences. And ultimately, that's what got him to breathwork. So he was studying what traditional societies had done, how they had gotten into what I call these expanded states of awareness. He studied modern consciousness theory, and he found that the two threads historically were breath and sound. So like, for instance, in shamanic societies, there was like rattling or drumming for the shaman to put himself into a trance state, and then he kind of channeled healing energy to his clients, as an example. And even in Buddhism, you're watching the breath when you meditate. So he spent the next 6 months to a year working with groups in Esalen over a period of 30 days to really find out what's the best combination of sounds and breath, and in order to allow people to drop as deeply as possible into these expanded state of awareness experiences in a one-day workshop structure. And that's how he created holotropic breathwork. And so that I was very attracted to, because I really felt like it was developed through scientific way, through trial and error, through research. And so tried my holotropic session, and I actually had a very similar experience to what I had in South America. I'm saying, oh my God, I found it. This is it. And so at that point, I immediately decided, okay, you know what? I'm having these experiences. I want to be able to give them to other people also. So I went through a very, very intensive 2.5-year training program to be a holotropic breathwork facilitator, so I could lead the workshops myself. And in the meantime, I was doing my own breath work. And the first major breakthrough that I had was that in one session, I dove back into my past. And sometimes this happens during breathwork sessions. And I went back to a time in my childhood when my parents, both of whom are Jewish and were Nazi Germany escapees, were telling me the story of what happened when they were children and how they'd gotten chased out of Germany and almost died. And a part of that story was that, for instance, my grandfather on my mother's side was a World War I hero. He'd earned the Iron Cross, which is the highest honor that you can get during wartime in Germany. One of my ancestors also in their town had actually paid Napoleon to go around the town and not burn it down. So everybody stayed alive and the town stayed whole. And they were embedded in German society. And one day they had to run for their lives. So even though they didn't tell me this, I created this thinking pattern in my head: the world is an unsafe place. And that stuck with me throughout my entire life. It's like, if you can't trust your country, if you can't trust your friends, it's like all my mother's friends turned against her. What can you trust? So all of a sudden I got, oh my God, no wonder I can't have a good relationship. How can you have a good relationship when you don't trust the other person? When you're not really willing to fully open your heart because you're afraid of getting hurt? And it really just all fell into place. And I just saw how I was creating these unsuccessful relationships time after time again. And because it was unconscious, my logical brain couldn't figure it out. So it was like a revelation to me. And immediately I said, okay, that was a reality that was created when I was 5 years old. That's not who I am right now. I don't have to work from that unconscious thinking pattern. And that started a process where I started to work with that and shift it. And my relationships started getting more and more successful. And now I'm in a 9-year relationship. It's unbelievably amazing. And it all came from that original breathwork experience where I saw what the root of the issue was of why I wasn't having successful relationships. So it just kind of really blew my life open in that way. So those are many of the same, types of experiences that are available among many others. And also, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to tap into the chat box, and I'll pick them up as we go forward about anything that I'm saying. So, okay, awesome. So it was really about like getting in touch with my unconscious thinking patterns, and then getting beyond like this thinking brain and really opening my heart more. And that was what I learned through that experience. And then I went through a series of other experiences which kind of blew open other parts of my life. And I finalized my breathwork training. And I started doing in-person holotropic breathwork workshops in Southern California for 40, 50, 60, 70 people. And I just saw how people were like opening up, where they were shifting in their lives, where they were shifting other people in their lives as they went home. And my one frustration was that in holotropic breathwork, it's an all-day workshop. So I was doing these like 8 to 10 to 12-hour workshops, for a decade, basically for thousands of people. But I'm going, okay, if I really want to make a difference in the consciousness of the world, it's just not enough people. But I couldn't figure out what else I could do. Because holotropic breathwork, which was my training, had a very specific way that you had to follow. It had to be in person. You had to have one facilitator for every 10 participants. It had a very specific track you had to follow. And it was amazing. It's an amazing modality, but it just wasn't scalable, basically. So then in one of my sessions, I really, really got the answer to that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but I ended up developing my own breathwork modality. And I'll get into that later, because that's really, after I talk to you about really the main meat of what we're going to talk about today. But just for a moment, let's just take I know I wouldn't like to sit for 55 minutes. And so let's just take a little break here, and I'm going to just play about 1 minute of a music track that we use in one of our breathwork sets, because many people, especially if you haven't done breathwork before, wonder, well, how does it work? And you're basically doing faster, deeper breathing to music. And in my online sets that I do now, the music lasts about 1 hour. In holotropic in person, it's like 2.5 to 3 hours. And it's a combination of the music, certain physiological changes that happen in your body due to the faster, deeper breathing, and giving yourself permission to release. And just the weaving together of those three things create this expanded state of awareness experience where your ego mind quiets down, and you get this amazing connection to what I call inner guiding intelligence. And it's that part of your psyche that already has all the answers. And the kind of theory of this has been around for ages. It's called universal unconscious or morphogenetic field, or many, many different things. And this is one of the things that when I was a teenager, I would have said, don't talk to me about this. But I've seen it work so many times in breathwork. It's clearly there and it clearly works. So, but music is a big part of it. So just to give you a sense of, the music follows a trajectory. It starts with a couple tracks that have a nice beat behind them, just to allow people to drop in and kind of get their breath going. It goes to this kind of energetic peak, and then it goes down into kind of more heart music and integration music at the end. So this is one of the tracks that we would kind of start with towards the beginning. And let me do a screen share here. Okay, and just so we can move around a little bit, if they're willing to, just kind of, I'll play this for about a minute, and just kind of close your eyes and just see how your body wants to move. And just kind of, again, it's just for a minute, just move, let it move whatever way it wants to. If your arms want to move, let that happen. You might want to stand up and just move that way, or if your body wants to make sounds, just do it. And just kind of flow with what wants to happen for the next minute. Okay, so how did that feel? You can just tap it in the chat box. Were you able to kind of connect to what your body wanted to do? But that's really just a sample of how we start the breathwork process out. Just to have music that kind of allows your body to feel like if it wants to move, it can, to support the breath. It has a nice little beat behind it. And and it's just kind of this welcome, this opening into the breathwork process. It's this very kind of beautiful open door that kind of allows you to kind of step through and take the first step into the breathwork process. So awesome. Yeah, can help it move. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It totally supports you bringing, and that's why the music is so important in the breath work. It doesn't create the process, but it does support you in dropping deeper in. Like it calls to your body. It has a language all its own. So it's very supportive in just staying in an embodied state during the breath work. So with that, we're going to move into the second part of the talk tonight, and that is, how can breathwork help in working with some of the things that are going on in the world today? Like, for instance, on a scale from 1 to 10, if you guys are willing to type in the chat box, how stressed out do you feel these days? 10 being the most stressed, 1 being completely not stressed at all. Are mostly people 8? Yes. 7, yeah. 4, 9, stress daily, yes. 6, perfect. And what are your strategies in working for that? So it's kind of like, how do you work with your stress? Like like when you start to feel stressed, what do you do to support, to kind of de-stress yourself? Or do you just kind of stay with it and just kind of let it do its pause and meditate? Okay. Yoga, slowing down. Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, so breath work doesn't have to replace whatever you're doing right now to deal with stress and anxiety in your life. It's a perfect adjunct, whether you do yoga right now to de-stress, whether you do use meditation, breath work can just be an addition to whatever you're doing. So it's very beautiful in that way. And Don asked the question, does music for breath work have to be through headphones, binaural beats? A single speaker is fine, but you just want to be able to make it loud enough so that when you're in the journey and it really comes to a peak, you want to really be enveloped in the sound. So you have to be able to turn it up fairly loud. So if you have a nice external speaker on your computer, you can use that. I'd say most people though use headphones, but you just want to have good quality music that can be played at a decent volume. And within that, whatever works for you. Okay, so think internally and tell myself to stop. That's awesome. So in breath work, there's several things that can happen that can really support you in de-stressing. And the first thing is what we call catharsis or release. And anytime you suppress an emotion into your body, there is always this kind of bioenergetic block that's attached to it. So you've got this stuffed in emotion and also this blockage in your body. And if you don't do any work in your life to kind of release, it starts to really play havoc with your health, with your ability to be vibrant and healthy as you've got all these blockages going on. And in breath work, one of the major things that happens, especially when you first start kind of your journey into breath work, is you get a lot of emotional and body releases. And your body does this in a variety of ways, but it's just incredibly healthy. And you normally feel awesome on the other side and very relaxed. And the important thing is breath work is that it's really a modality of complete, total non-suppression. It's kind of like letting whatever wants to happen, happen. And so in order for you to have an effective breathwork session, it's really about just opening up and letting go. And for me, when I first did breath work, it was almost the first time in my life where that had happened. Because it's pretty much my entire life had been about looking good, not making mistakes, not saying something that someone would get irritated about. So there was always a bit of suppression. And in breath work, it was the first time that someone told me, don't suppress anything. Just let it come. It's all okay. If you drool, if there's sweat running down your face, if whatever it is, it's all good. And it was just this incredible relief of not having to suppress anything. So when you're in breath work, you give your body permission. Many times, especially in the first session, you start getting these emotions that come up. But this time, instead of suppressing them into your body, you just allow yourself to feel them, whether it's fear or anxiety. Sometimes it can be passion and joy too. It's not always fear and anxiety. I don't want you to make you think that. It can be any emotion, and you just feel them. And you just let your body fully feel and express them. And by being in the breathwork container, like in the online workshops I do right now, there could be anywhere from 100, 200, 300 people from all around the world that are doing breathwork together. And you can really feel the safety of the container. You can feel the energy of the group. And it just is mind blowing how safe you can feel in the structure. And of course, during the session, people can always interact with me through private chat. So there's always a backstop. And the emotions just come out, or the body tensions and the way that your body releases tension in breath work is through like heat changes where your body can feel hot and cold, or sometimes your body will get numbed and the feeling will come back. Or sometimes your body just intrinsically knows that the best way to get the best release is first, like let's say you have something going on in your shoulder, energetic blockage. It will maximize the tension, release, and then it feels great afterwards. So this inner guiding intelligence that we have just brings us the experience that is most important for us to have in that moment. So it's a modality of trust and surrender, but you're surrendering to yourself. You're not surrendering to somebody else. You're not giving your power away to somebody else. So you're just learning how to trust yourself. And learning how to trust yourself is one of the things you can bring back into your life and work with stress and anxiety in your life. And you start to see that the answers are within. So you start to get these amazing cathartic releases of body tensions and emotions. So that's the first way that it can really support you in working with stress in your life. Because if you're completely relaxed, that there's no blockages in your body, it's much easier for you to deal with stress when it does come up in your life. And if you're already starting up in this kind of blocked stress space, it's just kind of it just takes one straw to kind of push you over the edge. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is that, as I did, you can start to become aware of your unconscious thinking patterns. And sometimes when things happen in the world, you get extra stressed because it's kicking in one of your unconscious thinking patterns. Like it can be, I'm not enough. And if you feel like you're not enough, even if something just starts to happen that isn't, crazy stressful, your psyche's going, I can't handle this. I can't handle this, because this unconscious thinking pattern comes up. So you start to become aware of them. And once you can become aware of them, you can start to work with them and not have them run you kind of underneath the covers. So as these thinking patterns start to come up and you see, oh, I have this thinking pattern, I'm not enough. It just comes up. And you start to see, oh my God, that's been running my life. I haven't been doing things because of that. And just all these realizations come to you. And so once they come up, you can work with them. And then when something does come up, like something stressful, like the pandemic, or you lose a job or whatever, like this underlying unconscious thinking pattern doesn't come up and magnify the stress. It's like there's already a stress, but then when you have this unconscious thinking pattern of I'm not enough, it magnifies it times 10, because you're already telling yourself, I can't handle this, when you really can. So that's the next thing that is really incredibly powerful about breath work and working through like what's happening right now in the world. The third thing is that during breath work, many times people come up against fear. And fear will come up whenever something new is happening in your life. It's because, like the brain is basically set up to keep you safe. So anything new is kind of like a threat, basically. And so it's just like in life. If you're on a interview, you'll start to feel anxiety. You'll start to feel fear, possibly, as it's a threat to your identity, a threat to your being. Oh, what if I fail? What if this? What if that? If you're on a new date, first date with a person, you'll feel a threat and you'll feel fear. And so during the breath work, when things do start to happen, when new possibilities start to open, when old things start going away, your fear will kick in because things are changing. And that part of your mind that just wants to protect you says, you know what? Things may not be so great now, but On the other side of it, it could be worse. No, let's not go there. Let's go back to what we were doing. We already at least know what that's about. So it's more like when you feel fear in breath work, you start to understand that you change your framing around it. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It means that you're opening up new possibilities. Things are kind of falling away from you that don't belong anymore. You're really starting to blossom. So the fear is kicking in. And it's kind of like more of a beacon, like that, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. Let's keep going, than a stop sign. And once you start to learn that fear can just mean something, it's like a mind mechanism where new things are happening and changing, then when it happens in your life, it doesn't pull you so much anymore. The stress doesn't pull you so much anymore. You can stay focused, you can stay calm, because you've already got this kind of wiring about, yes, I can process through fear. I've done it in the breath work so many times, it's not an issue. Let's just, it means new things are happening. Let's look for the opportunities instead of the negative side. So just that learning that you can process and getting confident that you can process fear is another thing you can bring back into your life to release stress and anxiety. And let's see if there's any more questions here. All right. Yes, Alexander said that, yeah, my body shows me tension in my shoulders now while listening about not enoughness. Yes, all those things that are stuck have like a physical body component. Absolutely. And one question about sound, what do you think of Tibetan singing and crystal bowls? And other types of sound and other types of thing can be great in kind of integration from breath work. And or you can even do breathing, but like the breath work that I do is really supported primarily by music. But it doesn't mean that that can't work. But if I was going to use it, I would use it either before the breath work, just to kind of drop someone into a very open space, or possibly even after a breath work session to support them in embodying and integrating the experience. And okay. Oh, that's a very good question. How long did it take me to integrate these attitudinal changes? And it didn't happen overnight. So I don't want to make you think that this is like this little like magic pill you take and all of a sudden everything shifted. After you get like an understanding of what's going to happen, you start to have to set up a practice in your life. And you have to start to be more present and to start to notice when this pattern comes up and to really catch yourself. And at first you don't notice it. You notice it afterwards. Oh, that happened 5 minutes ago. Ah, darn, it happened again. But then as you stay focused on it more and more, you start to get closer and closer to the event until you just notice it as it's happening and you can stop it in its tracks. So it's incredibly important to integrate the experiences into your life and to create practices to maintain. And there's many, many ways to do that, in terms of integration. Journaling is a great way. There's one way that I suggest, for instance, that let's say you had a very powerful experience, that you journal it in as great detail as you can. What happened in your body? How did it feel? And then every morning, right when you wake up, you read it to yourself, close your eyes, and reimagine yourself feeling in your body in exactly the same way, and just imprinting it for the day. And the interesting thing is that your brain cannot tell the difference between what's really happening to you in your life and what you're imagining is happening. So it's really the same. If you can just imagine being back in the experience, it can be just as powerful. So everything is a process. Absolutely. 100% agree. Okay, so that's another thing you can do. And also, one of the other things you can take back into your life about stress is surrender. One of the primary tenets of this breathwork, neurodynamic breathwork that I've developed, is just completely surrendering and opening to the process. And one of the things that people say afterwards is one of the major benefits is that they just start to get used to what is it like to really surrender to something, because you almost never do. You almost have some kind of resistance on some level because it's not what you ideally want. And once you start to do breathwork as a practice, you can really start to imprint and go back into your life. And when something happens that's going to cause stress, you don't resist it. You don't push it back. The first step is always accepting what is and just being with what is. Once you surrender to what's happening, it opens up entire fields of possibilities of how you could shift what's happening. But that doesn't work in your brain till you accept what the current state of affairs is. And that brings us to another thing, which is opening up new possibilities. You know, one of the things that can happen in breathwork is you can actually reframe experiences and open up possibilities that were not available to you before. And we're just going to do a quick screen share on this. And hang on one second. And I'm going to just read off one of the shares from one of our participants in terms of how this worked for him. Okay, hang on here. All right, let me get this into a slideshow here. Perfect. Okay, so this was what he emailed me afterwards when he shared what had happened to him in his experience. And so he started with, I knew little about neurodynamic breathwork online when I decided to take a workshop. Beginning with my first session, I was able to access a very deep place within myself where many important life lessons were revealed to me. I loved it. And since then, neurodynamic breathwork has been an important and transformative part of my life. In my most recent session, I was able to confront an incident of abuse from childhood that I'd been repressing. I was able to return mentally and emotionally to the place where it happened and radically transform my own interpretation of the experience. I remember that during the incident, at a point when I was in mortal danger, I was overcome with a feeling of utter calm, combined with the certainty that I would be okay. At the time, I understood how precious and meaningful this realization was, but in the days and weeks to come, it was crowded out by feelings of intense shame and the urge to repress what had happened. And during my most recent breathwork, hang on one second here, let me switch this around so I can see. 1 second. During my most recent breathwork session, over 35 years later, I was able to reconnect with the sense of divine safety that I'd experienced and recognize what a wonderful gift I'd been given. A very deep part of me was in contact with something divine that day. And through neurodynamic breathwork, I'm learning to revitalize and reinforce that connection. I feel excited, hopeful, and genuinely optimistic in a way I haven't felt in years. So that's just one example how something that had been running this man's life for 3 decades and having him feel like he was broken, like he was damaged, through this breathwork session, he reframed it, re-experienced it in a way where it actually empowered him in moving forward in his life. So just an incredibly powerful experience. Okay, so that's just one example of how just even reframing one experience can completely shift your life. Okay, so, all right, let's just take another 1 minute break. We'll do just 1 minute more music, and then we have about 15 minutes to finish up here. So get another music track going. And again, this is another track. This is a little slower, a little more trancy. Here we go. Move again, see what your body wants to do. Whatever it feels. Let it come out. Let yourself release that. Okay. How was that? How did that feel, that one? That was a little slower and trancier, but another very good kind of type of track to start a breathwork session with. Okay, so let's go to just the next session that we're going to finish up with here now. So those are, and also at the end, I'm going to give you a link if you want to try a free breathwork session. You're welcome to do so. Would love to have you come and check it out and just kind of see what it feels like for yourself. So just to give you a sample of what other things breathwork can do. I've been doing holotropic breathwork for 10 years. And again, as I said before, my biggest frustration was it wasn't scalable. I really wanted to reach many, many people so I could have an opportunity to really change the consciousness of the world with what I was doing. And in one of my breathwork sessions, I just got this download. Basically, the only way to do this, you've got to do it online. And I got to the end of the breathwork session, I opened my eyes and I'm going, what? Because in holotropic breathwork, you don't do it online. It has to be in person. So I was like, had this training about doing it online. And but I got this information from my inner guiding intelligence. So I knew there was something there. So immediately my thinking mind started to come in. First of all, I'd never done an online business in my life. So I didn't even know what Instagram was or anything like that. And so it was like, oh my God, it's like, and plus I'm 65, 66 now. I'm going, so this inner critic was going, you're too old to start an online business, or you can't learn all that. That's for kids. That's for people in their 20s or 30s. What are you thinking? And all this kind of stuff was coming up. But I'd learned through my breathwork sessions that I don't have to listen to my ego mind. And I just let those thoughts happen, let them happen, and said, okay, I got this download. I have to see if something's here. And so I just kind of plowed ahead and, didn't pay attention to the inner critic, just ultimately just started trying things and see what would happen and exploring. So it had really, I was allowing myself to open up new possibilities in breathwork of what would work and what didn't. And I didn't know if it would work or not at that point. I didn't know whether the community aspect would work online. There's only one way to find out. And so I started doing test sessions with people. I learned about Facebook. I learned about Instagram. And, just a little funny story, just to tell you how untechnology oriented I was. At that point, this was almost a couple of years ago, I still had a flip phone. I shouldn't even say that. That really dates me. For those of you who have no idea what that is, it's this little phone that you flip and it has 9 numbers on it. And if you want to like send a text, like the first number says ABC, you have to punch it 3 times to have a C. That's the kind of phone I had. So I was totally out of it in the technology world. But still, it's like I'm going, you know what? There's got to be something here. I got this download. I need to check this out and make this happen. And so I started working with groups. I started testing, and I tested for 6 months, with several hundred people that I'd already worked with in person, just to see what would work, what wouldn't work. Did the group aspect, was it available online? How to prepare for people? Was it safe? How could I interact with people to create a safe container? I had to relearn all this stuff from scratch. But I'd had such a strong download and this kind of visualization in my breathwork session of me doing breathwork for thousands of people, of world consciousness shifting, of these thousands working with thousands of people in their lives and thousands more people till millions of people were impacted. And it just, when you get in like this download like that, there's almost nothing that can stop you. So I just kept plowing ahead. And ultimately, I figured it out. In most types of breath work, they will tell you, this is the technique, follow it all the way through. This is how you need to breathe. But in neurodynamic, what we tell people is, okay, for the first, it'll be 10, 15, or 20 minutes. Do this faster, deeper breathing, connected, stay with the breath, stay with the breath. And at a certain point, and it could be 5 minutes in, 15 minutes in, 20 minutes in. What will almost always happen is your body just kind of takes over the rhythm. It's kind of like you just start being breathed. And once that happens, you let go of all technique and just trust your body wisdom in the same way that you trust the experience to be driven by this inner guiding intelligence. You trust your body wisdom to find the breathing technique that's perfect for you. So sometimes deeper in the session, people will, for instance, hold their breath. It's totally fine. It's just at the beginning, like you've got to follow this technique in order. You need to move a lot of air to create certain physiological changes in your body that support the kind of weakening of the grip of the ego mind. Like your blood gets more alkaline. In your brain, it slightly changes the amount of oxygen and blood flow to different areas. And one of the areas that gets less blood flow and oxygen is something called the default mode network. And that's the piece of your brain that it includes the frontal cortex that is responsible for these mental constructs of ego and self. And so physiologically, it helps you actually get out of the ego mind. And they've tested this with fMRI, and where they see that there's less activity in that part of the brain. And the interesting thing is, in some ways, it works in a very similar way in your brain as some psychedelics. But so you need to breathe, a lot of air at the beginning, but once that kind of kicks in, your body will shift. And sometimes people breathe very gently for a while. It goes in waves where it's more quick and then more gentle. Sometimes people will hold their breath for a minute or two. It's all good. Sometimes people don't breathe at all. They're just in this breathless space for a minute. It's just this incredible, beautiful space of just beingness. Sometimes people go into what we call yogic trance or yoga nidra state, where they completely drop out of time and space. They're just kind of floating in the universe, and they're not even aware of the music. And it's just a super healing, relaxing space. They come back, restart the breath. So it's really about trusting your own body once you get deeper into the set. There's one question from, okay, is your breathwork practice daily, weekly, as needed? Yes. So in essence, one of the purpose that I wanted to have in doing this breathwork was, I'm a bit into the whole neuroscience thing. And in neuroscience, one of the basic principles is that the neurons that fire together wire together. So in general, the more times you do something, the stronger the neural pathway gets. So one of my hypotheses was that, okay, if people can do breathwork as a regular practice, logically, they should get better access to this kind of inner guiding intelligence, inner wisdom in their everyday life as that neural pathway strengthens. So I do live online breathwork sessions 4 to 5 times every week. So people can do it as often as they like, really. Many people do it once a week. Some people do it less. Some people do it twice a week or 3 times a week. And it's really about, when you're called to do your next session, you just do it. It's about trusting yourself. It's like, I would never tell anybody you should do it twice a week or once a week or whatever. It's always like, learn to start trusting yourself, surrendering to what wants to happen. Some sessions are stronger. They need more time to integrate. So you want to wait a bit of time. Sometimes you're ready to go the next day, but it's starting to learn to listen to your body, starting to learn to listen to your inner wisdom and trusting it. And when it feels right, you just dive into the next session. So yes, creating a path, exactly. Okay, so let's just do a final little share on the, almost at the end here. Okay, and this is just really, again, this is the music that I played tonight. Those are the names of the 2 tracks. You can find them at Byron Metcalf's website. He's the person who did it, who put together the music, the composer. And if you do want to try a free session of my online breathwork, that's the link where you can go to. Okay. So really, just what I wanted to end with is that what I've really seen through breathwork, everybody has this amazing, unlimited potential in their life that our ego mind is trying to tell us, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not good enough or whatever. And the reality is that we can manifest almost anything. And it's really just getting in touch with our ability to do that. Breathwork is an amazing way to do it. And like, for instance, with my online breathwork, it's been 1.5 years. I have 40,000 people on my mail list, 110 different countries. Anything is possible. So I just really encourage you, whether you try this breathwork or not, just to start to open up to this amazing inner capability that you have, and just starting to trust yourself and surrendering to life. It's just an incredibly beautiful way to live. Thank you.